Hey guys, so today is January the 10th and I am starting my Snapdragons today. Last year I started them on about the 13th, so I'm within a couple days, and I think next year I might even start them earlier. If you look on the back of your Snapdragon seed packet, it's probably going to say something like start these 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost. But my experience has been that you can at least put these out a whole month in advance of your last frost date. So I'm doing it more like 12 to 16 weeks ahead of time. And like I said, I might even do them earlier next year than I am doing them today. So I am gonna divide up my starting time on my Snapdragons between 2 weeks. It's not that big of a difference, but I think I'm kind of in the middle of the month starting them, whereas I should be at the first of the month starting them. So I did start some Snapdragon on the 27th of January last year, and they did not do well. So I want to really get all of my Snapdragons started within the next week or so. So if you don't know, Snapdragons are divided into groups. There's a group 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can't necessarily tell what group they are by the back of your seed packet. And also the F1 following the variety name does not mean that's the group number. So for instance, I have these Orleans Early Lemon Yellow that are a group 3-4, which I wrote right there. It doesn't say it on the packet. You have to look online to figure out what they are. So I think I started these, I thought because it said Early Lemon Yellow, that meant they were a group 1, and they did just fine. So in previous years, I have started them all on the same day, and they've all done okay, but I just kind of wanted to spread out their bloom time just a little bit more. So I'm starting my group 1s and 2s today, and next week I'm going to start my 2 3s, 3 4s, and 4s. So like I said, you have to look online on the Johnny's website, and I don't know about other seed packets because everything I'm using is Johnny's pretty much. But you have to look online, it'll tell you what group it is. But just quickly, I'm noticing that the Chantilly's are all group 1, 1, 2. The Avignons are all group 2, and the Avignon took over for Costa series. So if you have Costa packets left over, they're a group 2. Cans is a 2, 3. All of the Madame Butterflies are a 3, 4. And like I said, this Orleans Early Lemon Yellow is a group 3, 4. So, and I know that the Rocket series is also a group 3, 4, maybe a 4. So anyway, I'm just going to briefly discuss some of the things you need to know about Snapdragons, and then I'm going to show you how to start the seeds in more depth than I will later on, because I don't want to have to show that every time. So because this is the first thing I'm starting this year, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do that. But first, Snapdragons are, like I said, they're a hardy annual, which means they can take some colder temperatures, unlike your annuals that will die if they are left out in a frost. These actually need that cold. I don't know why, but it does something to the plant that makes it stronger and healthier. So plant spacing wise, I always say read the packet, but the packet says 4 to 12 inches, which is interesting. 12 inches is insane, don't do that. 4 inches is okay, I'd say, but you want to experiment a little bit. I do mine 2 Snapdragons to a 6-inch square. So I'm actually only giving mine 3 inches, if that. And I think you could probably put them in even tighter. And this is specific to my area. I'm just going to say that if you don't put them in tight, the weeds will overtake, or at least be a big problem in your Snapdragon patch. So I do 2 to every 6-inch square, and how I do that is I place netting down, Hortonova netting that you can get at a greenhouse store or online somewhere, and I just use that netting because they're 6-inch squares to space my Snapdragon. And then as they grow, you just lift that netting up, and you've already got your netting on for when they get tall, because they will fall over. And Snapdragons are unique in that they have some kind of chemical in them. I don't know the science behind it, but they know which way is up and which way is down. So if they get bent over, let's say the stem is like this, there's no bud on it, and it gets bent over, this flowering part's going to grow straight up and down. You're going to have a crooked stem and you won't be able to sell it or use it. So even though it's rare, I'll be honest, in the past I have grown Snapdragon without the netting and it's been okay. If you get one bad windstorm though, however, in the time that they're growing, you're gonna have all crooked stems. So I say better safe than sorry. Put that netting on so you don't have weird stems that you can't use. Okay, so for me, this year I'm trying a lot more weed cloth because like I said, when the weeds take over, it can make your life a nightmare. But with Snapdragon and specifically, and also I've noticed with Orlea, Dara, excuse me, and I think it's just seedlings in general. If I use weed cloth in the winter months specifically, so like when it's still cold outside, the mice use it as an underground tunnel system and they eat all my seedlings. So I can use it later on for some reason. Maybe it's just because the mice are desperate this time of year and they'll just eat everything. In the summer I can use it just fine and the seedlings don't get eaten. So you're gonna have to experiment in your area and see what happens. Like if I could use weed fabric with the Snapdragons, I would. So don't you do that. I plant out in March, we start in January. I do not pinch my Snapdragon because I've noticed that those second stems that come up are really weak and short and they're just not as pretty, and I wouldn't want to sell it to anyone. And I mean, it's fine for use in your own as in your own personal garden or for your own personal use, but you can't sell those to anybody. So I grow them for their first stem, so I do not pinch. And the other thing is I like to leave a lot of growth out for the wild animals and the insects and the birds. So I don't cover the row when it's completely, like when I've harvested every stem in the row, I will leave those flowers in the ground so they can put up their second stems. Those are just not for me, that's just for nature. So that's how I like to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you how I start those seeds. Okay, so as far as seed starting mix goes, I was using Johnny's seed starting mix and I was actually combining it with, I think it's like a burpee seed starting mix, because the burpee is really, really light and I got it inexpensively and I felt like the Johnny's was a little too thick. So you want your seed mix to be kind of light and airy so those shoots don't have a hard time putting in roots, and it matters, trust me, because if you have a hard dirt like clay, your plants are not going to do as well as if they had something soft and fluffy to grow through. You can do your own experiments and decide what seed starting mix works for you. I just would not use anything. You can go wrong either way. If you go too thick with your mix, it's not going to work, and if you go too thin and airy and fluffy like with Jiffy, it's not going to be a good mix. So and also price is an issue to think about. So this year I tried to purchase a seed starting mix more locally that wasn't too expensive, that I felt had light and airy mix, but also had some kind of seed starting food in there. If you're buying stuff like Jiffy, or you're using too much cocoa coir or other things like that, it's not going to get the nutrition that it needs to grow. Your seedlings are going to turn yellow and they're going to get wimpy. So you definitely want to make sure that your seedlings have nutrition and then they have something light and airy to grow through. So I actually do use gloves to put the dirt in my seed trays because it's not because I don't want to touch the dirt, it's because cleaning up your nails after working in the dirt all day takes a lot of time. Like if you're going anywhere and you don't want to look like a homeless person, which most of the time I don't care what my nails look like, but it is a hassle to clean them out. So I'm just saying, if you prefer to not spend 10 minutes cleaning your nails out, I would wear gloves. And as far as seed trays go, I use I think it's Bootstrap Farmer, they're wind strip trays and they're expensive. So I started with like Amazon cheap plastic trays and I used those until they all disintegrated and I threw them away. But now I have these washable trays that are really sturdy. They're gonna last me forever. And I just bought like so many a year, and I'm gonna buy some more this year until I can replace all those cheap ones with good ones. Okay, so just to show you the difference between the trays I'm talking about. This one is a Bootstrap Farmer wind strip tray, It's got a little more air circulation going on through there. So it's got a little bit more spacing between your plantings. Whereas this one has just that tiny hole at the bottom. It's going to drain a little slower, and it doesn't have the spacing that this one has. Hopefully you can see that. So it's a 72 cell tray, okay? So these are the ones that I like, I prefer, but obviously I don't have as many as I need, so I do still use those. And then as far as tray bottoms go, this one is also from Bootstrap Farmer. And they come in all colors, all kinds of colors. You can get whatever color you want. It has no holes at the bottom. Make sure you buy the ones with no holes at the bottom. But I did decide, this is also Bootstrap Farmer, okay? And this one's more shallow. And I don't think it comes in colors, but I discovered last year that I prefer these to these chunky ones. I think you get into trouble with these because you can let your seedlings sit and get, you know, just sitting in water is not good. They can get kind of scraggly and nasty like that. This one you can see if there's water coming out, and yeah, it's just a better option, I feel like. Again, I don't have a million of these, so I gotta use what I have, but there you go. So we've got our trays, we've got our gloves, we've got our seeds. I did go ahead and make signs for all of these, and some of them I had grown before, so I had them from the year before. I try not to waste plastics. Like these are from previous years. You can see last year I started those on January the 16th. So I'm starting a little bit earlier this year, and I will talk about the varieties I'm starting later. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and whichever seed mix you decide to use, you're going to go ahead and you're going to pack these trays to the top, and you're going to make sure that there aren't any air pockets in the soil that you're using. So I just take my hand and I wipe it as I put the dirt in. I shove it in real tight, and then I'll go in and I'll even put my fingers in there and kind of just make sure. You'd be surprised. It happens every time there's a pocket and you just don't see it, and those seeds are not going to start. If the soil isn't, you don't want to compact it like crazy, but you want it to be full from top to bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so normally that's what it looks like. There is maybe a centimeter between the top and the top layer of dirt. I like to make it pretty full, okay? So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this one first because you want your soil to get a good soaking the first time through. But then you can switch out to those lower trays as needed. Some people like to pre-moisten their seedling mix, like they will pour water in a giant tub of seedling mix and get it all moist. I don't like to do that because I don't like my dirt to sit. I have to cover my dirt because I have cats and they'll get in there and they'll use the bathroom in there. So I have to cover it, which means it gets moldy if I get it wet. So I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to fill this one about 1/3 full of water. You don't want it too wet, but you need to get those seeds wet or they won't grow. They won't start sprouting. Okay, so I've got it about 1/3 the way full. Maybe 1/4. It's not quite 1/3. Okay, and then I'm just gonna place my seed tray directly into that water. And that water is gonna wick up from the bottom to lightly moisten all the soil in there. So you can see how if you had something that was a little anhydrous, like the cocoa coir, you're not gonna get that water soaking up, wicking up through the soil. Okay, so normally I would do all of my trays at the same time because I actually don't like to have my gloves when I'm seed starting. I just like it for touching the dirt, getting into the dirt. I'm gonna go ahead and take those off. So the first variety I'm starting in my Snapdragons is called Antibes Apricot 1, and I think this is new this year. And so because it's new, I've never kept track or record. I do keep record of all my plants. So I am going to go ahead and put the start date on the back. And then I'm going to put that in my tray. And I will go ahead and flip the camera so you can see the seeds starting. Snapdragon are very, very tiny seeds, so tiny. I won't be able to show you on camera, but they look like poppy seeds, kind of, if you've seen poppy seeds. And the way that I seed start is I actually leave it in the packet and I just kind of tap it, and it'll come out onto the soil. Now these, I believe they need light. Yeah, light is required for germination on these, so you don't want to cover these. That having been said, I will lightly cover it with vermiculite just to keep the, there's like a fungus or something that grows on the top of the seed tray sometimes, or maybe it's a mold, I don't know what it is. I think fungus and mold are the same thing. Anyway, I will put just a tiny bit, but I will try not to cover the seed, which is hard because obviously it's really hard to see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the top of my soil here. All right, so I'm just coming down my tray, and I can see when they're falling out, and it's not terrible to have 2 seeds in a cell. It's not the end of the world. So I'm just shaking until I can see it hit the soil. I know it's hard. If you prefer to plant these one at a time, you could probably use like a tweezer or something. And like I said, it's not going to kill you to have more than 1 seed. In fact, it might even save you time and headache. Okay, I believe they are all gone. So I was able to sow with 50 seeds. I was able to sow half of this tray, which is about 36 spots. Now, if more germinate, like if I got 3 or 4 seeds in, say, this one right here, I can always transplant one of those seedlings out so that it doesn't go to waste. But it's a lot faster to just buy enough seed so that you can afford to lose a couple seedlings, because transplanting is kind of a pain in the butt. Okay, so now that we have the seeds put into our soil, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cover with a tiny bit of vermiculite, not a lot. So here's the vermiculite, and I buy the fine vermiculite, the very fine vermiculite, because I want small pieces, not giant chunks. When you're doing cuttings and other things like that, you can use the chunkier version, but for seedlings, you want the fine stuff. So I am just like barely getting this on here. I'll show you. Just sprinkling. That one came out a little bit too much. Okay, so can you see that it's just barely sprinkled on there? Seeds that don't mind a little bit of cover, that prefer to germinate in the dark, you can cover it more thickly. This is just going to keep some of that mildew or fungus or whatever down a little bit. Okay, so let me show you the top tray. Okay, so these are also from Bootstrap Farmer. This one is a lot thicker, and this you would want to use on things like sweet peas because they get very tall. But I prefer these shorter ones. Mine are growing bugs inside, spiders and stuff. You can see they've been used and well loved. But the things that I like about these are that you can open and shut these ventilation holes right here and right here. And that's useful if you've accidentally put too much water in there, or if you really want to get those seeds going, you can close them. So I start in a closed position. I should mention that I am going to seed the rest of this. I only seeded half. You don't want to do a half tray. That's a waste of soil. So I am going to put this on once I've completed seeding the tray, vents in the closed position, and I'm going to put it on the seed racks that are behind me with the lights on, because remember, they require light to germinate. I set my lights kind of permanently on a 14-hour daylight cycle, so they start like at 6 a.m. and they go off at 8 p.m. That tends to work for everything I grow, so I just stick to that. I don't fuss too much with it. If these were needing the dark to germinate, I wouldn't turn the lights on yet. Once these start germinating, you're gonna wait until like 80% of your seedlings are up, and then you're gonna take the lid off. But it's very important when they're young that you keep them hydrated. When they're a little bit older, they can handle a little drying out between waterings, but when they're young, they require constant moisture for a little bit. So on the seed packet, you're gonna see like a germination rate there at the bottom. This one says 90% germination rate. So that means that out of every 10 seeds you start, one is not gonna come up, okay? So you can't wait for these to be 100% up, because that might never happen, and you don't want your seedlings to, I forget what it's called, but they die off if they're too wet for too long. So wait till about 80% of it's up and then pull this lid off. And if you're noticing after a day or two of the first seedlings coming up that nothing else is happening, go ahead and pull the lid off. You just don't want to risk killing the ones that have already come up just to have 2 or 3 more start. You know what I mean? So here is my timer that I have all of my light set up connected to. So as you can see, the arrow points to the current time, which is it's almost noon right now. And then where I have it pressed down on this side is where the lights are going to be on, and on this side with the moon where it's up is going to be when it's turned off. So it's turned off, or sorry, yeah, it's turned off, turned on, and we're going this way. It's a little confusing, but it turns on at 6 a.m. and it goes off at 8 p.m. if you can see that down there. Okay, and then I've got my lights on up here. I just have like Lowe's racks, and they all have lights attached. You can get all of this at Lowe's. I'm sure you can get it cheaper somewhere else. But buying a light setup such as this one, which is actually, I prefer these, to be honest, because I can lower and raise these lights as well, but it's just a lot easier to do in this setup. But it was more costly, so doing it yourself is definitely less expensive. So there are the lights, there are the seedlings, and I'm gonna fill this whole system up probably today with the seeds I have to start, but we're starting with Snapdragons. So once your seedlings are all set up on their racks, you just need to watch them. I would say check on them every 3 days at first, maybe just give them 3 days to get started, and then go back every other day maybe. You're not gonna kill them if they're up one day and you miss it and you check the next day, but you don't want to leave them for too long. So this one says that the germination time is 7 to 14 days. For me, it's usually right at 7. So I try not to let them go past that without checking on them. They are not going to need water that first week at all. So what I would do is just check the moisture once they start coming up. Remember, you have to keep them moist during those first early days. So I do have a spray bottle of water that I will use to wet the top. I don't like doing that because that encourages that fungal growth on the top, or that mossy stuff. I don't know what it is. I prefer the bottom watering, but if you're in a situation where your seedlings are looking like they're gonna die because the top isn't moist, I would go ahead and spray it and also bottom water, and then just, you know, it's a dance. You don't want them too wet, you don't want them too dry. So you're gonna have to just keep an eye on that. Like I said, it's most important in their early stages. Once they get going, they can handle drying out between waterings. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the varieties of Snapdragon that I'm starting this year. I really love the Chantilly's. So I have a bunch of Chantilly. I have Chantilly Light Salmon, Chantilly White, and I thought I had one more. Oh, I have Chantilly Cream Yellow as well. And then I have this Antibes Apricot, which I wasn't sure if I was going to like, so I didn't get them in as great a number as the rest of my seeds that I'm starting. So, and then I've got, in my group 2s, I've got the Avignon series. I've got pink, silver, and apricot. And I have done the silver, and I love the silver. but I haven't done the pink and the apricot, so those are new to me. And like I said, those took over for the Costa series. So if you've grown Costa pink, Costa silver, it's the same thing. And then I have the Cans lavender, and I grew some cans last year and just really loved it. So I'm doing it again this year. I also love the Madame Butterflies, but I have found that those later season Snapdragons, those later groups don't do well for me. I think our summer just gets too hot for them. But I have grown the Madame Butterflies successfully in the past. So I'm doing the Madame Butterfly Rose. I really love, like, there are colors that I really love to grow, but no one wants to buy them. So I've kind of decided that if there's something I love, it's better to grow it in my landscape and just appreciate it that way, rather than growing a bunch of it and having nobody buy it. And then my last one I really love is the Orleans Early Lemon Yellow. That did well for me in years past. So I would say my favorite colors are the lighter colors, like the pastels and things like that. I love the dark ones, the bright ones, but they just don't sell as well. So if you're growing it for you, pick the colors you love. If you're growing it for sell, you've got to think about what your customers are going to like. There were two varieties that I really wanted to try or do this year. I did one of them last year, but they're all sold out. It was the double frappes. And so if I can get my hands on those anytime soon, I'll probably buy those in and start those. There's the double frappe light pink I did last year, and I think there's a double frappe, it's either salmon or apricot, something like that they have, and like I said, those were sold out. So it's a good idea to kind of keep your eye on the seeds, and as they become available, buy them as soon as you can get them for the next year. And so that is it for Snapdragons. I will try to put some pictures up of some of the Snapdragons I've grown in the years past. Every Snapdragon has a different face. Some are more open, some are more closed. Like I said, I prefer the Chantilly's. I think I like that structure, but the double frappes also have a beautiful, I think they call it a peacock structure. The Avignons and the Cans tend to be more closed, and or maybe it's orchid structure, I can't remember, but anyway, you'll have to look it up. And you'll have to just kind of live and learn and decide what people like and what you like. But yeah, that's it for Snapdragons. One little thing that I want to mention too is that you want to keep really good records of what you do year to year. You want to keep good records of rainfall. You want to keep good records of when you start flowers, when you put them out, when you harvest them, so that you know what to expect from year to year. Those are obviously going to change a little bit from year to year, but if you know, for instance, that you planted out your Snapdragons in March of last year, it's most likely you're able to do that again this year. Like I said, I put mine out March 3rd, and I think our last frost was something like April the 14th. I do have it written down, and I know it was later than I thought it would be. So that tells me it can still get freezing outside and these things are still going to be okay. So keep really good records and write everything down just so you know what to expect the next year. Here is where I keep my seed starting mix in this tote that we just got from, I don't know, Walmart or something, but here's where I mix the two seed starting mixes together. Let me see if I can show you what so I just kind of layer it, but you can see that this is very light and fluffy, has a lot of cocoa coir or something in there. And then this top one's a little bit heavy. So I mix them together so that they even each other out a little bit. And I also think that this specific mixture does not have any kind of fertilizer or plant food in it. So I do have to feed my seedlings a seaweed mix. Now, this is the leftover from last year. Once this is all gone, I am going to use a mix that has a feed in it, and I think that those seedlings will do a lot better because of that. So here's the final setup for the Snapdragon. I did 12 trays in total, so over 1,000 Snapdragons started today, which, if you remember, the spacing is 2 per 6-inch square, so you can fit a ton of Snapdragon into a very tiny area. And you can see that they are already fogging up, which means we've got the humidity at a good place. And we will keep an eye on these for the next 7 days. and wait for that germination. Once they're at 80%, we'll remove these lids and just make sure they stay hydrated and protected from drying out while they're very young. Once they get older, they can handle the drying out a little bit better. And just a quick note, do not mix your varieties in the same tray. I won't go into all the reasons why. And don't do different flowers in the same tray. It's a bad idea for many reasons, but I'll just leave that there. I don't want to get into that so much today. But anyway, there they are.